Well, it's my great pleasure, first of all, to welcome everybody to Travel Tuesday and to introduce our fabulous speaker for this evening, Tony O'Connor. Tony is an archaeologist and a museum professional with degrees in ancient history and also in archaeology. He has worked as an archaeologist in many sites in North Africa. He's a fellow of the Society of Antiquaries in London. And Tony runs wonderful tours for ASA. But tonight, Tony is going to talk to us about paintings in stone, coloured figurative mosaics of Roman North Africa. Welcome, Tony. We're all looking forward to your talk.
Thank you, Susanna. And it's a delight to be here this evening to offer you this talk on paintings in stone, coloured figurative mosaics of Roman North Africa. And what I'd like to do over the course of this talk is take you through an overview of the amazing collections of mosaics that are to be found in Tunisia, in Algeria, and also, even though we can't visit it currently, in Libya as well. All parts of what was ancient Roman province of Africa Proconsularis and one of the wealthiest provinces within the Roman Empire, certainly during the 2nd up to the 4th century AD. And so within this talk, what I plan to do is to go through just an introduction into different types of mosaics, and then some of the themes that are displayed in the mosaics that we find in this part of the Roman world, and what these themes really illustrate about the priorities of the commissioners of the mosaics themselves, as well as the fantastic quality of the artisans who are producing these mosaics for them as well. So that's going to be the subject of the talk. The first image you can see here, and I think it's quite a nice one to start with, is a mosaic which dates to the 3rd century AD and comes from the city of Hadrumetum, modern Sousse in Tunisia. It is a mosaic which features a depiction of the great Roman author Virgil, who produced the wonderful propaganda piece for the Emperor Augustus, the Aeneid. And this is the only mosaic that we know of which features a depiction of Virgil within it. And we see Virgil here in this emblemata, this central area of this mosaic. He is accompanied by 2 of the muses. On the left, as we're looking at it, we have Clio, the muse of history, and on the right, we have Melopone, the muse of tragedy, because what Virgil is doing is he is being inspired by the muses who are there to begin the work of the great story that he's going to be telling. And we have part of the opening of that story there on his lap, where he says, "O muses, come and tell me how the terrible events that came to pass began." So this is a story of Dido and Aeneas, and a lovely example of a 3rd century AD mosaic from Hadrumetum. The area that these mosaics are located in is shown on this map here, largely on the purple, the yellow, and the green sections, which cover Libya, Tunisia, and Algeria. Morocco, which is over on the west, the orange color that you can see there, actually has much less in terms of very, very fine colored figurative mosaics held within it. And it may well be that the reason why that there is less of these very fine mosaics in modern Morocco is that that area during the Roman period of Mauritania Tigitana was an area which was much more frontier zone, much less developed, and doesn't have the wealth of the cities of Africa Proconsularis and its neighbors there, which were involved with great trade routes coming up via the Sahara from the south of the Sahara area, sub-Saharan Africa, and also linking out into Rome in particular. And these provinces were also incredibly wealthy in terms of agricultural products as well. So this provided the basis for the mosaic industry to develop, certainly by the late 1st century AD in these provinces. This image is one which really demonstrates some of this wealth. This is part of a Roman house in the town of Bulgaria. Bulgaria is in inland Tunisia on the west of the country. It originally starts off as a Numidian town. That's the indigenous people of North Africa, who we now call the Amazigh in general, but the Numidians are the term that was used for them in antiquity. And the Numidian population in Bulgaria grew to be extremely wealthy through agricultural activities and also through trade. And they're on a major trade route going up through the province. You can see here a part of an underground suite of rooms. And this is one of the things that Bulgaria is very famous for, is its underground rooms, which were built below the ground floor rooms of a large domus, a large house, and there are many of them within Bulgaria itself. So not only were these people excavating out underground dining rooms and bedrooms below their houses to keep away from the heat of the summer, but what they were also doing is they were decorating them, as you can see here, with extensive programs of mosaic flooring, as well as the wall paintings, which you've got to put back onto the walls there, which are now lost. Nearly all of these houses would have had major mosaics set within their dining rooms. And this house, which is known as the House of Venus currently, used to be known as the House of Amphitrite, but the interpretation of the mosaic has changed over a period of time. And the mosaic which decorated the dining room is this one, which is a fantastic example of a 3rd century, again, coloured figurative mosaic of the type being produced here in North Africa. The image here, we can see the goddess seated with 2 sea creatures beside her, tritons, who are holding the elements that she needs for makeup and preparation for the start of the day. We've also got these 2 little Eros type figures seated on dolphins that you can see holding up on the right hand side a mirror, and on the left a jewelry box, and various sea creatures floating all around her. And this is a great example of these types of coloured figurative mosaics that we're going to be going through over the course of this tour. One of the things with this mosaic is it would have been laid in situ. So we've got to think about, again, the skill of these craftsmen involved in the production of these mosaics, in that they are not producing a mosaic like this one in a workshop. Some we will see are produced in workshops, but this is actually being laid in situ within the house. And having the builders in during the Roman period to decorate your house must have been an absolute nightmare, to say the least, when you think of the amount of pieces of cut stone that are required to make up these amazing images. Just want to give you a run through of types of mosaics that we find within the Roman world. And this isn't an exhaustive selection, but does give you a good overview, I think. The first one that we see here, I've just put 2 images of it up, actually comes from Alexandria in Egypt. Those of you who haven't been, it's a good time to go at the moment. Not only the great new Egyptian museum, which has opened up at Giza, but also, after many years of being closed, the Greco-Roman Museum has reopened in Alexandria, that great center of Hellenistic culture in the ancient world. And it's had an amazing redisplay after being closed for about 15 years plus. This mosaic shows one of the techniques of mosaic production that was undertaken in the ancient world, and certainly in the period between about the 6th century BC down to the 2nd century BC. And this would be an example of a 2nd century BC mosaic, which is, as you can see, made of pebbles, which are assembled with some tesserae inset into them as well. But the main figurative elements are made of pebbles set into a mortar. So not only cut stone, but natural stones being used primarily in these black and white mosaics that we can see that were originating in the palaces of the Hellenistic rulers of the 3rd and 2nd centuries BC. Another type, which is one which is made in a studio, is mosaics made of absolutely tiny pieces of cut stone, very, very small pieces. And these are creating very detailed images, such as the one you can see here, which is actually a 2nd century AD mosaic, which comes from Udine in what's now Tunisia. And this was a Roman colonial site, initially founded by Augustus. The type of mosaic here is one which is referred to as the unswept floor. And the first of these was actually produced in the 2nd century BC at the court of Pergamon of one of the Hellenistic kings there. But it became such a favorite and well known that it is copied then over the centuries. And in fact, this copy dates to the 2nd century, the 3rd century AD, that we see with all of these items, which would have actually decorated the floor of the dining room of a house. And the idea for this is to make the guest laugh that the slaves haven't done their job. They haven't cleaned the floor up from the detritus of the last meal in the house. And so this would have been there to amuse them and to actually, by making them laugh, get them to expel any evil thoughts or bad feelings that may well be in residence at the house at that time. A much simpler type of mosaic is this one, which comes from the site of Kirkwan, a Phoenician site, again dating between about the 6th to the 2nd century BC, and is located at Cap Bon in Tunisia. And this shows a Tanit symbol, the symbol of this key goddess in the Phoenician pantheon in North Africa, particularly based around the city of Carthage. But actually we find Tanit symbols pretty well everywhere, linked to the Phoenicians in the west, which sometimes we put under the name of the Carthaginians, but also sometimes referred to them as Punic. And it's a symbol of this goddess, Tanit Pembel. This is a mosaic with some cut tesserae, just very simple white, set in what's called opus signinum, which is a Roman waterproof mortared floor, and which has multiple uses, but a nice example of an opus signinum mosaic from a pre-Roman period here in Tunisia. Another type of mosaic that we find, and it becomes more and more popular, particularly into the 4th century AD, is a type that we call opus sectile. And this is a type of flooring of mosaic patterns made from pieces of cut marble. And as you can see, all the different colors of the marble here are indicating the marble being brought from many, many different sources. So these mosaics become more and more popular because of the mass transportation of building stone and marble around the Roman Empire during the 2nd and 3rd and into the 4th centuries AD, where you've got trade from east to west and north to south. So cut marble, another very fine mosaic type. Within patterns of opus tessellatum, these are mosaics of cut stone. We find figurative images such as birds and bunches of grapes and fish, as you can see on this mosaic, but often set within elaborate geometric patterns, often based upon floral designs and making use of as you can see, a wide range of different colours within the stonework. So, and different areas have different main colour schemes that we'll pick up on a little bit later on in the talk as we go through. Figurative images can also be used to produce very fine patterns within them. This is one from the site of El Jem, which is in the central area in Tunisia. And here you can see these rather fierce-looking dolphins forming a framework with these birds basically sort of reacting against them. And this just purely is there to create a decorative pattern within the floor. So you can get these types of opus tessellata mosaics. These are larger pieces of tesserae set within them. And what these designs do show is that there are lots and lots of geometric designs which can cover very large areas and provide the flooring for areas in which the pictorial types of mosaics aren't being placed within. Then we do get on to these coloured figurative mosaics. Again, this is a very fine one from El Jem, and it shows the personification of the year, Aeon. The Romans believed that they were living in a golden age in the 1st century onwards, an age in which the empire had come through a terrible set of struggles, but under the blessings of the emperors, the world was in balance again. And so what we have here is Aeon wearing this crown with all the bounties of the harvests, the wheat, the pomegranates, the grapes being shown there on the crown on his head. And he's set within, again, this sort of wonderful floral roundel that surrounds him. You can also see on this image part of the wider flooring of the mosaic, where you've got these wonderful figures standing on these trellises surrounding him as well. And this is the main sort of decorative pattern within this mosaic, and it's one which again has sort of, for me, always sort of resonances of sort of 1920s blockbuster Americans film, basically, of a musical or a silent movie type film, these sort of Buster Berkeley type dancers. But again, wonderful images sort of showing incredible craftsmen at work here. Within the North African mosaics, one of the great themes which reoccurs over and over again are mosaics connected to the god Dionysus, sometimes referred to as Bacchus. And this is a mosaic, again, one that comes from the site of El Jem, ancient Thidrus, a very, very wealthy town. And here we've got this classic example of these types of mosaics with this white type of stone background. They've got a lot of access to limestone within this area, but then set within it these sort of beautiful designs, again showing the crater, the mixing vessels there with vine stalks coming out of them, and surrounding the figure of this rather innocent looking young lad who's riding on the back of a slightly hungover tiger. And that's because this is the young Dionysus about to begin his great journey back to the west from India. And Dionysus is a god of many shades and many different personalities, but has a special significance in North Africa. He's linked with a Phoenician deity called Shadrapa, and as such, he is a god who is omnipresent within your dining room and your larger reception room, the oikos, within your house. Here from Seuss is another fine image of Dionysus, and again you can see the image, the back of the image, the wine mixing vessels, the crater with the vine trellises coming out from it. But then you have this very, very well developed image of Dionysus himself in his chariot. Here he's now older. He is making his victorious return, his anabasis. He has a winged victory standing next to him in his chariot, a dancing Maeanid with a tambourine in front of him. You can just make out on the right a satyr, and behind him there's an individual who's holding a large wine vessel as well, just in case you need to drink. You can also see that the tigers that are accompanying him all seem to be arguing among themselves. And below there is a image here of a leopard who's drinking again from a wine vessel there, and the young Dionysus riding on the back of a lion that you can see there. So this is a very much a classic image of a Dionysic procession, and it shows again the quality of the workmanship that these mosaic production centers were creating at this time, and again just reinforcing the wealth of the individuals who are commissioning these things. Again, from El Jem, from a different house, we have this absolutely stunning mosaic. On the left-hand side, you can see the full mosaic itself, again with its wine craters and the vine leaves coming out from each of the corners, these little cherubs then gathering in the grapes, and around it there are a whole range of different figures that you can see there. Over on the right hand side, you can see there's a rather sort of grumpy looking little cherub there who's trying to sort of get a camel, a dromedary, to move along. And there's a sub-Saharan African that you can see behind the camel who seems to have a little mouse running along behind him, which is being looked at by a lion. Up at the top, you've got the image there of Silenus, who is a drunken companion of Dionysus, and Silenus there is being tormented by a group of youngsters who basically want to carry him off so that he needs to grant them a wish. And Dionysus, you can see on the right there, is trying to shoo them off. But the quality of the composition that you can see here, and the range of colors, the quality of the finish of the mosaic is absolutely of the first rate in terms of mosaic production, and again just shows what the quality of these workshops can produce. Another one, again, this one comes from El Jem, from again a different house, but here we can see part of a procession. Silenus has had far too much to drink, so he's being carried there in the center, with Dionysus being crowned by winged victory behind there as well. So not quite of the same standard as the last one, but nevertheless a very, very fine figurative emblemata that we see there. However, probably the finest of the Dionysus mosaics is this one. This is a mosaic which comes from Sétif, which is in modern Algeria, and it's dated to the 4th century AD, where it is the floor mosaic for a triclinium, for a dining room set within a house. And you can see over on the right-hand side, there is a hunt scene, the Malanga boar hunt, which marks the threshold of that dining room, the entry point, with this great mosaic there dominating the center of it. Things to bear in mind with this one, around the edges, we have these amazing interlaced roundels that you can see there, with centaurs fighting lions, and we have also these probably depictions of Oceanus there, with what seems to be an upside down vase on his head, but again just creating this sort of wonderful setting with these floral roundels forming the main baseline for that covering. And then you've got the central part of the mosaic itself, and here you have this amazing painting made of stone. Again, this one would have been laid in situ, not made within a workshop. You can see not only Dionysus in his chariot on the left, with again the winged victory crowning him as well, but within the procession we've got elephants, we've got giraffes, we've got camels, we've got lions, you've got tigers there as well. We've got captives being brought back as trophies from his journey, so indications there again of sub-Saharan Africans, but all marching along as part of this great return to the west of the great god, bringing with him the gift of wine, which is the reason why that these mosaics feature so heavily within dining room and reception room type settings. Probably this mosaic is one of the finest mosaics to have survived from the antique period. Another area of mosaics that people would have decorated their house with relate to the spectaculars. These might well be theatrical performances, chariot racing within circuses, and also the gladiatorial and animal hunts that would have taken place within the arenas. And certainly within Roman Africa Proconsularis, there are many towns with amphitheatres, and the local elite would either as quaestors, as officials, provide games in the name of the emperors, or they may well be able to gain permission to give games on their own behalf, which was all part of their way of climbing the local cursus honorum, the route of power for them to gain increased prestige within their own communities and further on their own careers and that of their families. And giving gladiatorial shows was something which many of them spent an awful lot of money on and then commemorated them within their exhibitions. This mosaic, which again comes from El Jem, is held in the Bardo Museum in Tunis and shows the cena, the meal on the night before games are given. And what this introduces to us is the importance of the animal hunts as part of these games that are being given by these Roman elites. So animal hunts in North Africa are largely controlled by a group of a number of organizations, 5 of them in total, that we see here depicted seated on this semicircular set of couches. And they are looking down into a pit upon which a group of bulls are located with a large jar of wine and a couple of small flagons of wine with the smaller slaves that you can see there down below. The names of these groups are that they are what we tend to call the solidates, these corporations of hunters or venatios. And we have the 5 groups here represented by their different emblems. On the left-hand side, one is holding an ivy leaf. Next to him, there is an individual there with a 3-pronged crown. And then next to them is an individual with a 5-pronged crown. Then we have an individual there with a millet sheath. And at the very far end, on the right, an individual there holding a staff with a crescent at the top of it. And he is a member of a group called the Telegeni. And the Telegeni are probably one of the most famous of these groups. These are the people who are capturing the animals, having them brought up from sub-Saharan Africa, basically also finding animals in the Atlas Mountains area as well. And they are collecting these animals to be displayed within the arena. They're also providing the fighters, the hunters, or I should say, who will then be entertaining the masses through the hunting of those animals in the arenas as well. What I really like about this particular image is one where, as we go through it from left to right, the individual holding the ivy leaf here is saying, "Let's get naked." Next to him, the individual there is saying, "We came to drink." And then after him, we have the individual there with a 5-pronged crown is saying, "You're talking too much." And after that, the individual with the millet sheaf, his slogan there is, "Let's get going." And the final one there from the Telegeni is, "We're already on our 3rd round." So you've got this whole hubbub going on among these individuals up on the top, while down below, the slaves are saying, "Be quiet, the bulls are sleeping." So it's a wonderful mosaic introducing the importance of these groups of hunters and the capturers of the animals, which are going to be making an awful lot of money for them through their displays, not only in the arenas in North Africa, but also all the way to Rome itself. Animal scenes feature quite extensively within the mosaics. Again, this one from Algeria with white background shows this tiger attacking these wild horses, and you can see basically just the quality of the mosaic through the depictions of the faces of the animals that you can see there, and just that sense of fear that pervades the whole thing. Here we've got a set of images relating just to gladiatorial combat. This is important, the different types of gladiators indicate. These give us a lot of information about how the gladiatorial fights, the duels between the match pairs, tended to take place within the arena. You can see with the mosaic at the top, and these both come from this site at Zlitin in Libya, you can see there are musicians involved. The image below indicates we've got referees involved in these matches, so they're not free-for-alls, but they are very expensive and very, very controlled performances that takes place, some of which obviously end in the death of at least one of the individuals taking part within it. From Lepkis Magna in Libya is what I think is one of the great mosaics, again, of the late 2nd, early 3rd century AD, which was discovered at a Roman villa site just outside of Lepkis Magna, one of the great Roman cities in Africa Proconsularis. And this shows the aftermath of a gladiatorial combat. And again, it's a real painting in stone. It's the only way to describe it, where you can sense the exhaustion of the winner, and you can see his what would seem to be dead opponent lying opposite him on the right-hand side there. So we've got just the sense of this amazing amount of quality, even in the surround of this one with the interlaced swastika patterns, which is a good luck symbol, have this sense of a 3D design used there within it, which gives additional depth to the mosaic. So an incredibly fine piece, incredibly naturalistic. The tonal qualities of the musculature being shown on these individuals is absolutely stunning. So this is the type of work that is being produced by these workshops. And one of the things that you do have to take in mind is that the people who are producing these aren't largely seen as artists, they're seen as artisans. Basically, these are works that are commissioned, and we don't know the names of the artists in many ways who are coming up with these particular designs. One of the things within all of these designs is that what they are doing is they're commemorating a major event which has had the involvement of the person who's commissioning the mosaic. And these are the givers of the games. And so those mosaics I've just shown you would have indicated gladiatorial combat, which had been organized and paid for by one of these leading citizens, who's then had the image commemorated within their homes. And this comes to a head in many ways with this rather amazing mosaic, which is displayed at the museum in Sousse in Tunisia, 3rd century AD mosaic, we believe, and one which not only shows the activity going on in the arena with these animal hunters, they're undertaking the slaying of all of these leopards that you can see all around them. And not only do we have the hunters being named, individuals such as Hilarienus and Bellarius, and actually my favorite, Spitara, because not only do we see him hunting the animal, but in order to make it a bit more interesting for the audience, he's actually on a pair of stilts when he's gone into combat there. The animals are also named, so potentially they are known to their audiences, were known to the order, and maybe because they've been very successful before in getting the best of the hunters sent against them. But the great thing about this mosaic is we have this wonderful inscription that you can see in the center of it, where in the midst of all of this activity, you've got an individual there holding a tray full of bags, which are marked as well. And the inscription reads on the left-hand side what's going on in many ways. And it says, "My lords, that the telegeni for each of these leopards deserve your favor. Give them 500 denarii." And in terms of my lords, what they're saying there is this was a cry that the herald was given to the audience there, who are now sort of indicated that, you know, the decision is to you, the audience, to make. And on the right hand side, we have then the response in many ways to this, which tells us that it is acclaimed by your example. May the games be remembered for future generations. What a show. What an example to the quaestors, that's the officials, and for those who will be giving games under their own right as well. You have set an example. What a show. What an event. This is your day. This is wealth. This is power. This is now. And let's have the hunters dismissed with their money bags. So what we see here is this sort of basically the sort of toing and froing between the giver of the games responding to the wishes of the audience that he's brought together for the games performance, which has been given and shown. And he's also demonstrating his own munificence, because what we have here is that on that tray, we've got 4 bags of coins, and on those coins, there are the mark for each of those bags holding 1,000 denarii. So he's doubled the pay for the hunters. And this mosaic would have been displayed in one of the public rooms within his house. Having Hellenistic credentials is something which is really important in the Roman world. This mosaic comes from Bulla Regia and is part of a Greek inscription that you can just make out there from the top, which got a few errors in it. So maybe they weren't that au fait with Greek as they were hoping, but basically it provides a motto to an individual to trust in yourself that we see there. Images such as this one of the goddess Athena there with a double flute, the Aulus there. She just finished playing it, and the satyr Marsyas is watching her, and he will pick it up and learn how to play it. And this is an important morality lesson within Greek and Roman mythology. So again, the owner of this house in Libya is showing their knowledge of the Greco-Greek mythology and its play within the Roman world. Other stories from Greek mythology feature very heavily in the mosaics we find in people's houses. Here we have Daedalus and Pasiphae, the wife of Minos. And as you can see in the background, he's just produced a cow model for her to be able to climb into so she can have a sexual relation with the white bull. And from that will be born the Minotaur. So the story of Daedalus and the Minotaur being referred to in this particular mosaic. Rather very fine one. This is 4th century AD and comes from Neapolis, modern Nablus, and it shows an important point in the Trojan Wars where we have Agamemnon receiving Chryses, who is the priest of Apollo and father of Chryseis, who Agamemnon has taken as his sex slave. And Chryses is demanding back his daughter from Agamemnon, and he's bringing golden vessels and various things. Agamemnon's going to refuse him, and from that, events will unfold which lead to the climax of the Trojan War. So what we see here is, again, this knowledge of Greek mythology and stories displayed in this house from Neapolis and dating to the 4th century AD. From Lambiasis, again, another very fine mosaic we've got here, where we've got Cyrene, a nymph, the god Apollo, whose arm you can just see over on the right-hand side there, he's reaching out to. And this is linked to the foundation of Cyrene in what's now eastern Libya, in the Jebel Akhdar area, one of the great Greek cities. But again, the quality of this late 2nd century mosaic is absolutely stunning. We do find that these patterns, some of them are unique, some of them you don't see copied, but others you do find various forms of them. On the right-hand side, from Zeus, Hadromentum, we've got this amazingly realistic portrait of a long-suffering Oceanus, who's the god of the sea. But we find Oceanuses, such as the one over on the right-hand side in Carthage, find it in Timgad, we find it in lots of other cities. So images are being seen, and there's a repertoire of images probably being circulated, we think, in pattern books or by mosaicists who are moving between different areas, different provinces to produce their words. Others, like these various fish scenes, again, we tend to see many of. Again, slight variations on the form. Another one here is the rather wonderful Ulysses mosaic from the house at Duga. At the bottom there, you can see Ulysses tied to the mast with the sirens. The image above it shows a similar scene, not as good, from a fountain in Chichal in Algeria, but they seem to be based with a common set of elements within them. So it was something that the different workshops seem to know in terms of what's going to be required to create these good scenes. And again, they seem to be linking within these pattern books, or as I say, mosaicists moving between different areas. Amorous encounters, again, feature within dining rooms and are linked to Dionysic scenes. So we tend to see a lot of these types of images here, again, set within these rather wonderful emblemata. You get more types of amorous encounters, such as the image here that we've got of Apollo chasing the nymph Daphne over on the left-hand side, and Hylas, the companion of Hercules, about to be seduced and abducted by these 3 nymphs. So these types of images would have been stories that people knew, but what they're showing within these as well is still their Greek knowledge as well, and their knowledge of Hellenistic culture. Another one which features very often, one side on the left, I can show you an image of a very sort of innocent looking bull having a wreath put on it by Europa, and then a rather lascivious bull who seems to be licking her with his tongue that you can see there on the other side. And Europa and the bull features again and again within the mosaic repertoires here in North Africa. Home protection is very important. So images such as the ochare, which is all about sexual fecundity and fertility, that you can see there through the male and female genitalia being depicted. And then you've also on the right here got the evil eye being assailed by a phallus and 2 snakes to protect a household. So protecting your household from evil is important. Medusa, who can turn people to stone, is also an important image of protection. This from a bathhouse near to Hadromentum, dating to the 3rd century AD. The color palette in this is absolutely stunning. But this again is a protective image to be used, and we find it used over and over again. And one of my favorites, where we have this owl surrounded by various birds falling out of trees to their death, and the inscription over the top tells us the envious birds are overcome but the owl doesn't care. So basically, this is one about having confidence, protection of yourself within your home. So again, a nice example again of one of these protective images. And finally, just to finish on, a mosaic which represents the idea of otium, of relaxation, the good life. Again, these feature very heavily in the mosaic depictions that we see. This comes from the domain of the House of Julius, which shows a Roman villa in the center. And then we've got the dominus and the domina around it within their gardens. We've got hunters. We've got people working the fields. This is the idea of the good life as it was within the Roman world. And so I'm going to stop there with that because I'm nearly out of time. In fact, I've eaten into question time, but I'm more than happy to take any questions now. People have got them for me. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. That was fascinating. And what wonderful images of those mosaics. I especially loved all the animals, and they were just extraordinary to think of the age of them and how they have survived. And thank you also for the explanation of the different types of mosaics. I learned a huge amount from that. So really wonderful talk. So please sing out if you've got a question.
The very last magnificent one that you had of Dionysus, which was so intricate with the black background and the central panel to it, it made me wonder how they would arrange furniture in that room, because you wouldn't want to have a dining room table in the middle like we do, because it would cover up that beautiful central part. So did they sit around the edge of the room? Is that how they managed it?
Absolutely correct. Yeah, no, the dining couches and small tables in front of the dining couches would have been placed around the edges of the room. The people who are attending would be able also to circulate within the room to look at the mosaic, but basically that central panel would be left clear, and that's what we tend to find within these triclinia, these dining room areas, that generally the mosaics in the center are there to be viewed and not to be cluttered up with furniture.
Thank you.
Any other questions anyone would like to ask? Olga, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask and clarify those huge, well, I don't know, I can't tell how big those mosaics are. So they would be filling a whole room. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, not all of them will be, but
because you couldn't see the individual stones there. So they're just like a painting. So I'm assuming that they would have been on a very, very large floor.
They would have been. So you've got Roman houses tended to be decorated with mosaics on the floors, some of them on the wall, but not that often, other than in bathhouses and sometimes actually within bathhouses on the ceiling as well. But basically within your house, you'll have zonal different types of mosaics. So in areas where there's basically a lot of toing and froing, you might have a lot of geometric mosaics being shown with sort of people being laid with people walking across them. But in the main reception rooms, you want to show off your wealth. You want to show off your knowledge. You want to show off what you can afford to acquire. And so what you have within both the dining rooms and in particular the oikos, the great reception rooms of these houses, are these absolutely extensive mosaic floors which show the pictorial images and geometric patterns around them as well, and they cover the whole of the floor. So many of them are laid in situ because it's the only way they could create the patterns down there, but sometimes they leave a central block open upon which a specific mosaic can be added in, and that would be made in a workshop and brought to the site at the end of the works and added into it. But yeah, if you've got to imagine a great big reception room, and some of them are huge, they would have all been decorated with these mosaics in the floor, all made out of these pieces of cut stone.
Just amazing.
How to impress your guests in the Roman era.
Absolutely.
Any other questions that anyone would like to ask?
I noticed that most of the mosaics that Tony showed were from Tunisia, but the upcoming tour is to Algeria. Tony, did you choose not to show some of those from, or many of those from Algeria, because you think the ones in Tunisia are better?
No, not at all. I think in many ways, the quality of the mosaics that you have in Algeria pretty much on a par with what you find in Tunisia. The Algerian museums, the way they're displayed there tends to be on the site museums, so they're spread out around the country much more. But that's really good because you actually sort of see them within the context of where they've been found. Unlike, we say, something like the Bardo, where you've got this vast amount of mosaics, but they're taken away from their original context much more. I think I showed those ones in particular. I mean, there was a few Algerian ones, and I did highlight the Tunisian ones because they are quite good example. They're very good examples of the types of themes I wanted to cover today. But the Algerian mosaics are of a similar quality as well. So I think it was just pure happen chance. So I do apologize about not showing any more Algerian mosaics in there.
Thank you again, Tony, for a really fabulous talk. It was just wonderful. Thank you all very much indeed for joining us, and a very big thanks to Tony for a fantastic talk. It was just wonderful.
Been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining us. See you next time.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.